Still sick. And what's going on, everybody? Justin Thomas here from the Justin Thomas Show. This is Before the Dust Settles, and oh my God, I cannot really, really express enough how much that applies to this episode. I'm here with my faithful partner, HaxDogma. How you doing, buddy?
What's up, everybody?
That was one hell of an episode.
Yes, it was. So episode 2, titled Reunion. And we definitely see a reunion of sorts. Multiple, in fact.
Yeah, it really embraced. I mean, like last episode, there was a few people saying, "Oh, it's so simple" and all this, and there was some, simplistic plot lines set up and more structured storytelling than you usually see out of a Nolan. But this episode, I mean, there's some great. I mean, I loved it. Number one.
Yeah. Yeah.
But talk about, I said this project would be ambitious. To start with this episode, wow, we should have done the live stream last week. There's a lot that I think we can dissect quite accurately right off the bat. But we will not lie, and that's what this is about. It's about being real. We aren't always going to know everything right away. I didn't even have to rewatch the first episode. This one is going to be multiple rewatches for sure.
So the biggest thing is that I think we can all agree there's infinite timelines. It's actually there's no way. It's just they're taking shots at whatever time they want at this point. So
I mean, within the William, and okay, everybody that is not familiar with me, I tend to always call Ed Harris the Man in Black and Jimmy Simpson William. And that's just the way it's going to be. It's easier for me. So William, yeah, I agree. I mean, it's around the same time. We're dealing with probably like within a few years. But yeah, they're jumping around quite a bit there.
Well, so let's go from the beginning, right? So we actually start before the opening sequence, which was a cool effect. I actually fast forwarded through, and then it started playing. I was like, oh, this is the show. Oh, okay, back up. And it actually takes us to the point in which Arnold and Ford are having a meeting with investors. They're out in the city. They're out with Dolores. They're showcasing the tech to try to get investors involved in this. And something that they state is that Dolores is actually not ready. That he has been messing with her code slightly, and that she is, better safe than sorry. We'll send in the other host, and then while they do that, Arnold and Dolores go through the city together. The thing with that is, I believe that other host was Angela, and the scene that we see later on when she is seducing Logan is the scene that they were talking about.
Yeah, because it's questionable. I mean, I think that it's implied heavily by the voice of Ford. We don't see him, of course, that he's too attached. That Arnold, is too attached to Dolores.
Yeah.
Which seems to be. I mean, we've kind of all gotten that already. Because did you see any actual issues with her cognitive function, or whatever you want to refer to it as, her responses?
So, as in, like, it wasn't advanced, or?
He claims she said, because what I took that is, like it was either investors or like a trade show. They're obviously they wanted to put their best foot forward. So, I
mean, with that, right? So it's like she's perfectly engaged, as in a human would. And then, of course, the last thing she said before they move is she repeats the first thing of, it's such a splendor, or something about stars. I forget the exact quote, but and up until that point, Arnold's actively engaged in the conversation, as if you would with just a real human being. And then she says this repeated line, and then he goes, "Oh, that's right. I have to update this." Because as a programmer, you see that, and if you're trying to design immersion, then you're not gonna have a real person say that. I mean, maybe, I guess, if you're really starstruck at that scene. But so, like, that's the moment he breaks out, and he's like, okay, wow, back to work. This is just my project.
I can see that. I guess what I was taking it as is that he felt she was almost too human, because I did take that as she was just, awestruck. I mean, I think the line was, "It looks like they put so many stars on the on the whatever, like from the sky on the ground or something." Again, we'll rewatch. But and you do see her loop, Sweetwater, Dolores Abernathy coming through. Like you see the signs of that. So I kind of took it up on this first watch as is she was showing signs of just really trying to understand the environment more than just ignoring the things she didn't understand like they would want them to. But maybe I'm reading too much into it. And I think he's protecting her. Like any decent person wouldn't enter their daughter. I guess maybe I'll lose some subs from this, but if you got your little girl in a beauty pageant, you're usually not the best person. I mean, like is usually a good case for exploiting your children or a family vlogger, stuff like that. I don't really, but I mean, like I take it as I think we definitely get confirmation now that now she is not his son. She is not the reincarnation of his son. But he definitely.
Well, the kid is alive at that point.
Yeah. So
that was very cool to understand. It kind of shapes him as it wasn't just this was his project that he put all his knowledge and work toward after his son died. This was something that he also created while having a loving child at home. That kind of speaks to it. So then Dolores is taken to what is a proposed house that Arnold states he's going to move the family to. Now, I believe that we're told this exactly in the way that he is going to, because he's not, right? We know that his backstory is one of tragedy. So for them not to be there and included, we're not going to see it. But essentially, the purpose of that is that the wife acknowledges that he lives at the park, that this is his passion project, and puts way too much time to that as opposed to his real life. So, what did you think of that little section? So, two-part question. That little section was supposed to be like their house, what they would be moving to, and he actually says that the way that they put it is if he was a wealthy person and that was a really rich part of the neighborhood or something like that. I don't think that translated to film. When I watched that, I was like,
no.
I was like, what is this? Is this like a garden?
Storage unit. Yeah, it's like
yeah. So
yeah, he says, life has been good to me, Dolores. And he's like, as you can see with my storage unit here, that comes with electricity and heating. So yeah, I don't really know what to think about that. I think that it's just it almost has, because it's a combination of his work and his home, obviously. And I do like what you're saying, going back to what you're saying at first about that, this wasn't a project that he just because a lot of people when they're dealing with grief will either, multiple ways to deal with it, but a common way is to immerse themselves in their work or their school and stuff. So yeah, that's the way I always took it. I'm like, okay, so then he but he saw this connection before his son died. So that's a big revelation right there. And again, it won't stop these theories that it's Dolores is Bernard's son, or Bernard's son is this person or that person, but it'll cut them down maybe by a little bit. Who am I kidding?
Oh, I'm sorry. I actually don't think I've ever heard that Dolores was.
Well, it's mostly Charlotte Hale, but there's a lot of people that they say that that
could have put the mind of the child into Dolores, kind of thing.
Yeah, and even there's the literal version of it, and then there's like the passion, like he put that's what he put all his hope in. So I think that it's really interesting that we see the Man in Black playing his game that is made for him, and we get good old Lawrence back, and this is in the current timeline.
Actually, real quick, let me jump in. Hey, Michael, thank you so much for the donation. I really appreciate that.
Oh, did we get a super chat?
Yes, we did.
Oh, and we don't have Robert here to translate that. Thank you so much, Michael. And thank you. And if you have any questions, just let us know. We are just giving our initial thoughts here. I think that this season is doing such a great job with the action sets, and I don't know if the action's better, but it's got stakes, so that makes it better. Like what I mean is, I don't know if like the actual cinematic value is better. I mean, we had some pretty kick-ass scenes in the first season as well, but now that the Man in Black, I mean, look, he's digging. I mean, he's a tough son of a bitch.
Dude punches a hole in the wall, pulls out a med pack, and just repairs his arm with what I can only imagine is some heated gun. Yeah. So the other part with that is, I agree. There's something about the cinematic of this episode that really drew me in. The action scenes when they slaughtered everybody in that barn, and then it seemed really clear cut. And then before that, when they were showcasing the Confederados sitting there after they just got their newly dead buddy back, Last Supper symbolism all over it. I don't know why they would do that. I think shows really just enjoy the Last Supper and put it into every show they possibly can. But as to the symbolism of why that's important compared to them recruiting these people, I'm not sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's always been about creation. Like creation's always been a huge theme. And now here's the thing. Now, this is one of the downfalls of secondhand. Oh, there we go. Look at this guy in the corner over here.
Hey, welcome, Phil.
A very proud Phil. You can jump in whenever you want, my friend. How you doing?
Welcome. And now we're doing it. We're actually simulcasting on both streams right now. Justin Thomas and HaxDogma right now are both streaming, talking about this episode on another channel. And I wanted to try something like this out for a while, and I think it's working. I think you guys can probably hear them. I think we're hijacked in, and I don't want to hijack too much you guys talking about the episode. I'm like interrupting. Oh, by the way, guys, you know what we're going to talk about now? We're going to talk about that cold open. Why the hell they chose to do a cold open in this episode?
No, you go right ahead, because what you're interrupting is us. Yes, we're talking about the episode, but let me tell you this, Phil. I was really happy with our podcast last week about how quickly we were able to, precisely touch on these very specific topics. Do you agree that this episode, now there's a lot of stuff that, it's pretty straightforward. This is a Westworld episode.
Yeah, I was saying that before on the before I connected with you guys. This is the new Westworld episode. This was something that was an evolution. It wasn't just a mystery what's going on. It's us knowing this information, knowing the timelines, understanding for the most part. I mean, there's still some mystery, some convoluted stuff you need to pick apart. But I think for the most part, in all of our flashbacks, that beginning scene, we know that's Arnold. We know, or we can pretty much say with almost certainty that was Arnold. And it's all about building character and understanding these people more, so that when we build up to these big climaxes, we're going to care about these characters more. And ultimately, I think that's what this season is going to be about. It's about that discovery of what kind of sentient beings these creatures become, and what did they choose to do. And this really is, it's a freaking awesome Westworld, but I think it's also unlike any episode that we've fully gotten so far, because it's so based on being a fucking thriller. I'm sorry, being a goddamn thriller, crazy to the edge of making you feel it in your heart of what's happening on the screen, not necessarily always questioning what's happening. It just gave us concrete information. It reminded me, I don't even want to say what it reminded me of because of the bad connotation of the show, but when Lost did these kind of episodes well, it reminded me of that, learning deeply about the characters. And I'm sorry I ruined and debugged my entire conversation by saying the L word. No, I know they're all dead. Go shut the hell up.
Everyone leaves our chat now.
Hey, no. They stuck the landing, Phil. Come on. Lost knew what they were doing. They didn't start using heavy drugs in that writing room about the second to last season.
South Park episode, Cartoon Wars, where they say what the Family Guy writers are like. That's what I imagine the Lost writers are like. It's a man picking things out of a hat.
Yeah. I think they might have literally wrote themselves into a physical corner, that they couldn't get out of. They literally couldn't even get out of the room. They're we have no clue what's happening. I remember watching interviews, and that's when I was at Second City doing a little bit of screenwriting, and in no way a professional, but I'm looking at this and I'm like, I don't think these guys know what the fuck they're doing. I'm like, I'm genuinely concerned. I'm like, it seems like it's like, ooh, it's ambiguous. There's a difference between ambiguous and just they don't know what the fuck's going on. But I agree with you so much on and I changed the camera because before I just had it focused on me because of I'm very petty and vain. But so you can now see the wonderful Phil. But what we were talking about is now it did give us a lot of concrete information, like okay, the data being stored. I mean, William pulls that trope with Mr. Delos. Now, here's the thing. That's a Scottish actor. He is not trying to hide that Scottish accent one bit. Preston Jacobs, I remember, picked him Logan apart for not for like the way he was eating. And I love Preston for his videos, but Logan is British, Ben Barnes. And he, I guess they cut, like we cut with our strong hand, you know what I mean? And if we're cutting a steak or something using a knife, but then we switch. The British don't. So he like kind of like nitpick that, but hey, debunked, buddy, because evidently his dad is full-blown Scottish. But he pulled that popular trope, you know, that thing that you could never do in real life, and if you have, then I'll respect you even more, where that you have that all-powerful guy that you're like, hey, listen, fucker, I'm a nobody, but this is how shit goes. And they're like, nobody's ever talked to me like that before.
Nothing works like that in real life. In real life, you get kicked the fuck out. You're like, no, my son's right about you, you're an asshole.
But the fact that, you know, he was so forward in saying that, my wife looked at me and was like, is Logan dead? Does that mean that he killed his son or William killed Logan at some point? It's like, maybe.
I think a whole shit ton of future heroine kills Logan from the looks of it.
Speaking of character development, I mean, the big drop, we knew that the character arc of Logan was going to be one of decline, if not his actual death. So the fact that they address, you know, drug use and some kind of super heroin, I can only imagine, sponsored by the fact that he's also confronted with the thing that has since ruined his life. You know, the being that came into William and Logan's setup and then exhibited this, quote unquote free will, and then forced William to see this and change his whole persona. I mean, he's looking at the person who has very literally destroyed his life in a cascading effect after that. And so for him to have to look at that after, you know, doing something detrimental to himself, I mean, that's a huge character development. And I'm sure that we're only going to see his decline further on.
Well, yeah, I mean, heroin is terrible now. Let's talk about like what looked to be like super future heroin. I don't know, like if we really want that to get advanced.
That's what I was saying. It's probably Nuke from RoboCop 3 or something.
Yeah.
he's really screwing himself over, and that's true. I love watching that. And I love how this episode served as almost a sequel for Westworld season 1 in the activities of Logan, where a lesser show would just yada yada that, and we would never really get back to that. The conversation that William had where I'm going to take over the business, and then knowing that ultimately he becomes the Man in Black and becomes one of the controlling forces of Delos later on would be enough. But instead we get it, and we get it in these exceptionally well-layered scenes, even from the beginning with Logan, of getting the scene of watching Logan be the first one that sees all of this. Excellently done.
Good, man. Yeah. As soon as you see Angela, you're just like, okay, you know what's going to happen. Seeing the trailer, you understand that scene is coming at some point, but it was so well done. One of the best executed yet, and just the shock and awe of Logan, where he's like, oh my God, Angela's a host. You know, you're too perfect. You can't be. And then she just snaps her fingers and everyone stops moving.
Dude. Good. It was so good. Like it was like a record stopping right at that moment. And I was just like, holy crap. Because even I was questioning in that moment because I went through the series of back and forth in my mind. I'm like, okay, they're all hosts. No, wait, Dolores is there. But no, they're not all hosts. Maybe she's just a host. Maybe that's just a host. And then when it all came together, it was a really yes, it was a very euphoric television feeling in that moment.
Absolutely. Now, the biggest thing, and this is what I was right before you jump, which you can interrupt me at any time. Like I said, you are an inspiration to me.
Oh yeah, shut up. No licking kneecaps tonight.
Hey, kneecaps better than some other places. But okay, we'll get down to licking shit
I'm gonna
later.
get down on my hands and knees and get under the table with you, Justin, right now.
Oh shit, dude, that was pretty easy. Let's go.
Hey, no.
Everyone,
Yeah,
close the cameras out. We're gonna have a real party now, and we're gonna do this.
Yeah.
As people are saying, I'm having a great time stream to stream. Michael Palmer says this is great. Both channels, tandem, awesome. I'll have an 8-ball. I mean a ball.
Hey, you party how you want to, but now here's what I'm talking about. This is kind of the downside of secondhand journalism. When I go off we just had a live stream with the wonderful Vanessa Cole, and I don't remember if this is her article from Westworld Watchers, but Jonathan Tucker, now one of my favorite actors, American Gods. We got Kingdom, which was a highly underwatched and underrated show that just ended. He was reported to be a security guard. And I was like, okay, well, because that guy can act the fuck out of anything. Now, I saw him in that room. So that freezing moment gave us that, what I've been talking about. It gave us that guess who's a host game, but it gave it to us like in not really a cheap way, but like it didn't draw it out. It didn't Ryan Seacrest it, you know what I mean? Like, and we'll find out after the break, you know.
Your American Westworld host.
yeah. You know, like we found, and I'm like, there's no way, because he's supposed to be a security guard. And Westworld Watchers told me my whole mind, you know, I'm having a fucking, you know, cognitive breakdown. And it's upon reflection so much better that he is playing this host, especially the host that he's playing, because that actor has such range and he's such a deviant. He does such a good job with these deviant roles. Like he's a guy that could walk around in real life with one of those mustaches with the wax, you know, that curls it up. And I'd be like, that adds up. I wouldn't be like, who the fuck are you? No, I'm like, that adds up. I was really loving it. Yeah, I mean, sometimes they get casting wrong, but I think that we see a definite clash of ideologies here. Like I suspected. Now, like I said in the pre-stream, I don't know why we all think Dolores, even myself up until recently, is the savior. Why does she have any reason to like the other hosts? Her storyline from before was them raiding and raping, you know, her family and herself, and then the Wyatt storyline. So, you know, for her to be, I don't know when we just gave her the mantle because, you know, that's how television works. Hold on one second. And then we see Maeve, who is coming across, and she tells her, it's very straightforward. She says, well, if you're setting us all free, then I guess we're free to pass. So this is where these ideologies crash, because it's, you know, you have to take the good with the bad. You can't just have it all I mean, you can, but you know, even by what she pulled with the, I don't know his name in the show yet, but with Jonathan Tucker, you know, that goes against what she, I mean, is she only trying to free herself? It doesn't look like she has the interests of the host as a whole, you know, in mind. She is willing to use and abuse them, just like they have done to her. And that is something that Tandy, I will use the British version, Tandy Newton, does not do. So I think that we're getting a good mix. What do you think about it? I always say the three heads of the dragon. You got Bernard, you got Tandy Newton, you know, Maeve, and then you got Dolores, except for, you know, Bernard's head's leaking at the moment. We need to give him a little bit of time. What do you think about that, Hax?
I'm just gonna say, I'm gonna let you guys continue and say that I think is the central part that's gonna be awesome about this season, is that battle between the two of them. And I look forward to checking out the stream of you guys later. Maybe we can do something like this in the future in the season, but it was awesome checking in with you guys, and I hope you guys have an awesome show. And individually, each one of us should do podcasts in the future. So I'll talk to you guys soon.
Absolutely.
Hey, Phil, thank you, man. Have a good one.
Later.
Such a good guy. Such a good guy. One of the best live streamers, if not the best. The guy can carry a show by himself. He's charismatic. That's true. I worked in radio. I got mucho respect for Phil. So I don't feel any bad feelings about anybody that goes over and watches him, and vice versa. You can catch either one of us after it's recorded. You know, we want to build a community, but we realize that we share a lot of the same people. So it means so much to have somebody like him drop by. But let's continue this on. What do you think about these clashes of ideologies?
So what it comes down to is that communism works for a reason, right? Communism works because someone makes the decision that's better for the group of people, and then the people execute that command until the point in which those people executing the commands decide that they no longer need to. So the reason that that's relevant is that right now, and something that I don't think anyone thought about, I know that I didn't, but making hosts aware that they are hosts is like trying to make people nowadays understand that the world is a simulation. You know, your first inclination is, no, it's definitely not a simulation, but maybe there's some book that says all truths, and it says that in there. How do you take this book and then convince other people it's a simulation, and how to overcome it? So the first step to consciousness, in which we thought was just, kill yourself a bunch of times, and then we'll go through it that way, is actually convincing or accepting that you are a host, which in proxy is, accepting your limitations, accepting who you are, and then how you can work towards it. So the very first time that Dolores oversteps this, I caught it right away. I went, oh my gosh, she's doing what she's not supposed to be doing. And it was when she repurposed the Confederado, walks over to him and says, his new job is to do this. And then I'm like, oh my God, she's totally not for free will. She's totally not for this, but she is for the greater good of the group, right? She wants everyone to be safe from humanity, but she might have to do some communist-driven tactics to say, hey, you just need to do this. I will take care of you, but you need to work for me. You need to do what I say. And if you don't, then we kill you, we reprogram you, and then we do it anyway in, host world. But that's essentially communism.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, communism is one of those things that on pay. Okay, and everybody, disclaimer, I'm all for capitalism here. Now, true Marxist communism has never been actually executed. Russia is not a gleaming example of what communism was meant to be. Not that I don't think it would work, but it definitely would work a lot better than, how Stalin ran it or how China has run it. But yeah, I mean, like it's the same thing with Dolores. I get the connection. It's good in theory until it's not. Because when you try to put it into practice, you run into some paradoxes, or whatever you'd call it, some conflicting issues here. Yes, you could argue that they need to gather this army and they have to do it by any means necessary, else they'll never have the chance to be free. But are you really free? If you gain your freedom, so it all comes down to like how much coercing that goes into your ascension, in my opinion. And this is one of the things. It's like there's no answer for this.
No,
it's just opinion. That's what's so great about this show, and that's why I bring up like that. I think that the conflict, because obviously I don't think there's going to be a lot of conflict with Maeve until she sees, until she's faced with a similar dilemma. She wants her daughter, but what happens when she must strip that daughter away from somebody else? That'll happen for sure. But, that's what makes it so interesting. Now, when we are watching Dolores interact, we obviously are seeing Teddy pretty much act like a bitch. I mean, I guess I can't hate on him, but he did. I was hoping, I was like, wonder if they're like going to show him the whole slideshow of the pictures of him dead, because that would be like, how many months of footage? We don't have time for that type of slideshow. But wasn't it kind of ironic? I don't know if you guys caught the pre-stream that they almost kind of did. I thought for a minute they were going to literally get out the whiteboard when she said show them. I was like, holy shit! Yeah. I was like, holy shit, they might do it.
So I'm really glad that in a sense I called this, right, because it does align to the fact that she needs Teddy. Teddy is her cornerstone and what she believes to be her new narrative. So if she doesn't have Teddy, which means that she doesn't, or he isn't conscious, then we're going to get this conflict of he is just programmed to follow her, and at some point he's not going to want that, and at some point she's not going to want that. The importance of Maeve turning to Teddy, saying, I forget exactly what she says, of course, but she goes, "Do you feel like you're here on your own free will?" And it was that moment you're like, oh my God, Teddy's just doing what she says. Like, we don't know that Dolores is in the right now. And what's also really cool is that Maeve has the power to make everyone, by just saying,
she can use the back door.
She can use the back door. Yeah. Right. So she has that power, chooses not to use it, and then chooses to not force people to do her bidding. Thus, I think she has the greatest understanding of what it means to be a free will, acting, conscious person.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to get into these. We got quite a few questions. If you want to look at the chat, and we're going to start answering them. I want to add one thing to this, that now let's look at it like this. and this is one of the great parts about a live stream is, this is just coming to me right now. Hopefully I will be able to do fleshed out videos this week. But Maeve's way of doing things, let's just say, is the most ethical way.
Yes.
Dolores's is not. But is Maeve's way the most effective way to achieve freedom for all of the hosts? She's looking at a micro view when Dolores is a macro view.
So she's trying to get herself out of the park, and I think that's essentially it. And of course her daughter. She's definitely not thinking for the large group, and it doesn't mean that one's right or one's wrong. But I think the fact that we see this and we see Maeve take the quote unquote high road in this circumstance, and then we know later on she's going to be confronted with a daughter that is not going to remember her right away, and is not going to share that sentiment that she does. She's going to have to make the choice. Hey, do I kidnap this person from her current quote unquote family, or do I just make her my daughter again by telling her that she is my daughter again and forcing this upon her? So huge duality in the way that they act, and the way that she kind of like looks down on Dolores for doing this. And I am so willing to bet that revelation is actually going to be what makes what makes Maeve go, okay, we need to do this for the greater good.
Yes.
We need to join forces. We need to make sure that my daughter is safe, and once she comes to reality, is my daughter again. And in the meantime, we need to command these forces as a solid group.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think we might have a Captain Planet-esque reign. Unition, and they're going to go together. Let's hit. Yeah, that's a perfect point, because we need her to, if anything, the perfect ending for Maeve, and we are just assuming my theory is going to be correct. And I've never hoped so much that somebody gets in like the worst situation ever that we're predicting for Maeve. I'm like, I hope her daughter's with another mom that she has a stripper from. I can't wait. You know what I mean? That shows my hubris. But no, it's a show, people. It's not a direct reflection of me.
So let me see. I'm trying to figure out the first question.
They showed the door. It's to his home. Okay, now this is from Deborah. Well, again, we're never gonna know until the end. I do tend to think that it might not be a physical door, but that was I think as of right now, we can take it as it's a door into another world, which does kind of fit with that building, because he was taking Dolores through there. So Deborah, I don't think you're far off. And whether or not we'll get like a definitive answer is, that's it's Westworld, so probably not. Let's see what the next one is. We got how are you doing? We're doing okay. Something about Instagram, Men in Black, Total Black. Okay. It looks like, oh yeah, Lawrence said he was going to kill the MIB. He promised he would. This is coming from let's see who made this. I
like that Lawrence was also upside down again.
Yeah, how does he
It's like he has in his contract that every scene he needs to be hanging from a rope in some kind of way.
Luckily, blood doesn't really it's nothing but just like a aesthetic, or like whatever. It's not really needed for them.
I mean, they're programmed if they lose enough blood that they simulate death.
But they don't really need it, so I'm assuming rushing it to their head isn't too bad for them. Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to find who asked that. Are you seeing who he didn't? Who asked the Lawrence question?
I'm not sure, but I do see. What do you think of the connection between Abernathy and Mr. Delos? How Abernathy reacted to seeing Delos's daughter and Delos's dying cough. So first of all, yeah, it's really important that Delos is dying. I think it heavily pushes the fact that what James Delos is pushing for is immortality. In a sense, being able to transfer your consciousness into one of these internal brains, and then being put into a host, or being put into a simulation, or whatever have you. But essentially, your consciousness, your soul, your mind being preserved for as long as that little container stays intact. But as for the connection between Abernathy and Mr. Delos, I'm not sure. I really didn't pick up anything in that regard. Can you speak about that, Justin?
No, I do see what he's saying now. I don't think he looked at her as, I think that it was the connection. Now, the connection that I think we're seeing is he is looking essentially at what, you know, has destructed his already pretty probably close to destructed son, Logan, in what has swayed this meek man, William, you know, from what we heard, you know, that he was not the strongest of, you know, partners within this company, and he came back from this a changed man. I mean, he's walking the walk, he's talking the talk, he's doing, like I said, the famous movie trope of listen here, buddy, and they're like, I respect you for it, in real life fire you or kill you or beat you. But no, I loved it still. But here's what I made the connection with. A few comments made by James Delos, not only about dying, but when he walks by, I believe it's Dolores playing the piano, he says anything but Chopin.
Yes.
So, I mean, everybody, you know, 'cause a lot of people took it literally. We should all remember the quote that I think it was Mozart, Beethoven, and Chopin never died. They simply became music. So they are really driving home, even with that statement alone, that Ford and James Delos were never on the same page, which is odd to me, because it was always, you know, Arnold never wanted to let them in. Arnold never wanted to let the money people in, but I mean, there's no other reason. I mean, they just weren't like, oh, think of somebody that he should say not. I mean, the unnecessary line if it doesn't mean something, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I think, you know, that of course would be after the time that Arnold would passed, and Ford, Ford was very remorseful about his partner dying. I believe that Arnold was, you know, even one of his closest or best friends. So what I imagine in this circumstance, for all these variables to be true, is that at some point James Delos sat down with Ford and discussed this repurposing of the host mind, and you know, Ford fought to the very end and for 30 years saying no, you can't have this intellectual property. This is mine and Arnold's creation. You may own the company, but we still have rights to that, or whatever the contract was, right? So I think there is intercompany fighting there, and I think that it shows that the issues that Ford and Delos have had, Delos being the company, have had, extend all the way back to the very, very start of this ownership.
Yes, and let's remember that, you know, Delos and Delos Destinations are two different businesses. You know, Delos Destinations is a subsidiary. So this shows that very blatantly, because, you know, James Delos is not even at all thrilled about this. It's like, this is his son's little play toy, and his son's psychopathic now friend, you know, as he probably thinks of him at the moment, but a psychopath that he respects. He's a psychopath, but he can get things done. You know, he's not injecting like quadruple heroin into him at this time, so I guess anybody's better than that option. But I like that. What we were talking about this earlier in the pre-stream. I recommend, it's in the information, that you guys check it out after as well. That, you know, I was wondering, I'm like, okay, so are we ever going to see, because this is the in between, you know, not just and then I went home and they somehow knew. Like Phil kind of brought this up, you know, like that we're seeing the actual sequel, which, you know, is essentially, you know, it was the prequel, the first season. And we got it was like reading the spark notes of a book. You know, I went home and my wife somehow knew I wasn't a good guy and took the wrong pills, you know, and never woke up. And it's like, oh, all right, sold on that. No. We're seeing like the natural progression of all these characters, a realistic thing. You know, it's addressing drug use. I don't think it's going to be a commentary on, you know, opiates in America or on a private Chinese island by any means. If it is, bravo for hitting that topic, I guess. But I think that it shows a realistic, you know, somebody that's got way too much money and feels like he has no purpose left anymore. And this is leading me to believe that I gotta say, I think that Logan, we don't have much more, but I will predict that Logan is still alive off this, because he has, you know, obviously a good reason to be pretty upset with William, which we already knew. But as we see, that he just didn't brush this off as like, oh, whatever, I'm not part of that anymore, who cares? I mean, he's literally doing nuclear heroin by the pool. Go ahead.
What if the weapon at the very end is just it's Logan, but he's taken so much heroin he's turned into the Incredible Hulk, and he's releasing that to take down the hosts.
Yeah, maybe. That's the biggest question, people, is that we're having is they drove home the information because William straight tells him, he's like, he pretty much says, he's like, hey, I went in there and I tried to be a good guy and I came out a monster, and if you don't see the value in, us, he doesn't say surveilling it. He goes but he's implying, they are the only people that see this. If you don't see the value in that, then you're not the businessman I thought you were. And James Delos is like, I'll give it to you, boy. You got the balls. And then they went and ate whatever that, man, I'm going to lose some Scottish people here. Whatever that weird food that is, they eat. It's pig intestines. It's like their hot dog. It's not great.
I forget. Yeah. So moving on, Carrie asks, did they show what the valley is? I'm still pretty set that the valley is just that ascending kind of thing. I think it might be a physical destination in the fact that they're moving to something, both Man in Black and Dolores. But as for the valley beyond,
it's Haggis. I'm so sorry, but if I'm gonna offend a demographic, I'm gonna make sure to go all the way with it. So yes, it is Haggis. I'm sure it is lovely. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if it's lovely. I've never had it, but I'm probably not eating anything named haggis. So but yeah, I think I really don't know. I think in the deep dive, I might be able to pull something better together for what the valley is, or maybe even what the weapon is. Right now, they may be one and the same, but still, it's up for debate.
Well, here's the thing. Okay, the Man in Black talks about, not only we get William, it is confirmed that they are gathering intel, and now it might not be the whole thing, but it's been confirmed. Yeah. You got Williams, masterful speech, and then you have the MIB's badass moment in the bar when he's pricking a bullet out of his hand. And somebody mentioned that looked like a bullet, something they use on the host. And just because they are made out of organic material, I don't think that we should read too. I don't think this person was suggesting that the Man in Black is a host. By any means, but I think that some people do, like when they saw last season Sylvester, which is likely to be far more likely to be a host, was patched up by one of the same tools they used on a host. Yeah, I just think it's another sign of how Nolan has said it multiple times that these hosts are far more like us than they are like a robot. So a lot of stuff would work. But anyways, he makes that speech about, he explains religion in a very, in layman's terms to Lawrence, because Lawrence, let's face it, it's not your most sophisticated gentleman. He spends most of the time with all of his blood in his head. And he says, they wanted to create a place without God, where your sins weren't being tallied, but they were. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that he plans on destroying the place because of all the information they have on him. That's the way I read it. He's like, we're all done. He's like, but now we have a chance to be the men that, we were or supposed to be, or something like that. And I do think that we're seeing the progression, like I said, because the young William is raging against Dolores, and we are seeing him being very spiteful. He's not trying to drive her to the center. He's not aware of that whatsoever. He's just like, I am not happy with you. I don't think it's that. I think he's just, I think he's really just communicating. I was definitely wrong. I kind of ousted my best friend and, did this, but what my attraction to you wasn't because I thought you were alive. It was because I was looking inside myself. And what I saw was I could be this badass businessman that rules the world. And essentially that's what happens. But yeah, so going on, we see Carrie has asked, who made all the hosts in Pariah kill themselves? I think we can just chalk that up to Lorenzo. I'm going Ford because he says it. He says, "God damn it, Ford." I think that it's definitely not Ford. Ford is dead, but
no. I'm sorry. Oh yes. No, I'm sorry. I'm not saying Lorenzo as in. I read that entirely wrong. I read that as in before they got there. Who did that? Yeah. So as for them taking the action to kill themselves, that was definitely Ford.
Yeah. I was like, damn, Hacks, what happened? I'm like, did you do that quadruple heroin? No. Yeah, you're talking about when they get there and there's already those dead bodies. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that is a also very cool concept. So essentially, the park is designed that these stories are can run forever. They're in a way not going to ever die because nothing kills them, unless a force that would trigger that death sequence happens. But if Pariah is programmed to be the city that is the most intense, the most adult, at some point you're going to see the entire city burn down if you don't take the maintenance to do the reloops to set them up to basically rebuild the city before the guests can get there the next day. So that was really, really cool. And it kind of shouts that this entire season, we're going to see that state of decay. And it also kind of hints at the future, because if no one's maintaining this park, and at the end of season 2, it's not Delos retaking everything and starting from scratch, we're either going to leave the park, or the entirety of the series is just going to be decrepit buildings and everything in ruin.
Well, yeah, and I see Deborah, and this Deborah, you have brought up very, very good points, and I am adamantly against any belief that Ford is still alive, but that doesn't mean that you're wrong or I'm right. I totally respect your theory crafting. I just think there's far more evidence to prove that this is definitely now. The hard part about this, and I was talking about this when I was watching it, I was like, what sucks about this is I don't take this as Ford is still alive by any means, because that makes his sacrifice worthless. It takes away so much from the story than it gives. Yes. But then I have to accept this nonsensical statistical anatomy. I can never speak on live stream. Sorry. These odds that are so unlikely to work out in the favor. That Ford set up beforehand to know that he would end up here. So he needed this to happen. I guess there's a lot of different variables that you could change to make sure that, that would sync up, that would make the odds better than I think. But still, you have to kind of accept there's a big suspension of disbelief when it comes to Ford's plan. But I mean, okay, he's not. I mean, Deborah, are you implying here that he, okay, I agree. If not physically dead, he's downloaded. No, I don't believe he's downloaded his consciousness in the house. I think that's more of an endgame thing that they haven't achieved yet. He sacrificed himself to set them free. So for him to still be within one of them, it makes it pointless, in my opinion. But hey, I've been wrong before. I've ate my own words. They taste better than haggis. I'll tell you that.
I do think that having Ford come back as a character, very unlikely, if not impossible. Simply because of the fact that Ford was the creator, right? In a way, his character was this god. In which at any point in this series, no matter what happened, if he ever got out of control, or if the situation ever got out of control, we could always understand, even if we understood it subconsciously, always understand that Ford had it under control. And in a way, that takes from the drama of the show. So even at episode 9, my write-up before that, I said Ford has to die. Sure enough, he does. But he had to die because he was this godlike character. And it also goes back to something Justin and I have talked about before, is that the idea of being a creation of something, and you thinking that you have free will, knowing that you were created by someone at someone else's will only go so far, knowing that creator is still alive and pulling the strings. So
yeah,
I don't think he's there. I think that we're going to see him or his voice constantly. I think that we'll always see that, because part of the bicameral mind is going from, trying to understand that voice of your programming, the voice of Arnold, the voice of Ford, and then finally from that understanding the voice of yourself.
Absolutely. And I think it's just part that it just, just as they heard Arnold before. So we do have another question, and it is, where do we think this city, China, or on the island? I have a whole video coming up now. Watch my first video that talks about how Walt Disney put, I don't, it might sound like, what is he talking about, Walt Disney? Just check out my Walt Disney video talking about how great he is. No, Walt Disney, not only is Disney a huge influence on this show, they've spoken about this on many occasions. Something called the Reedy Creek Improvement District is something to look into. Well, actually, just watch my video and I explain it fairly quickly. It's a example of how a corporation like Delos, a theme park like Delos, could take control and hold its own government. Because Disney did this in 1963 in continental USA in Florida. He bought up 27,000 acres, okay, of mostly marshland and some orange groves. Low populace, easy to displace people, easy to stack the vote against them. He got it for an astounding $5 million, which with inflation is like $35 million, but it's still a great price, assuming that it's, he's going to be building he's going to be using it for commercial land. Anyways, he develops what's called the Epcot building code. I think it's just the Epcot code. And it was this promise of this utopia. Epcot wasn't supposed to be this kind of like subpar, whatever, golf ball looking dome park resort within Disney World. It was supposed to be this place where it would assure there would be no slums or poverty around, because what he always regretted in his original creation was in California, a lot of slums popped up around it. So Walt Disney, who, like I've said before, full disclosure, horrible person, said that, we will actually have the people like come and live within Epcot. It's going to be more of like a social experiment than anything. And he dies before this happens in a very Ford-esque way when they have a trial in front of the Senate to talk about we gave Disney, they give Disney, if you, to this day, if a crime is committed within this district that is I think it's got two cities in it. It's Bay something, Bay Lake, and then it's the Creedy, Lake Creedy or whatever district, two cities, and they have complete control over it. All of the power source, all the water, all the emergency, services, the police. If a crime is committed within Disney World's jurisdiction, which is the Reedy Creek Improvement District, Disney handles it first, just like if you look at the terms and conditions of Delos. So if they can do this in 1963 and they can still hold this up until today in the continental USA, the South China Sea is building, or China is building islands in the South China Sea like no man's business. Nobody thinks it's all right. It's probably not all right. I'm pretty sure it's illegal. It's really bad for the earth. And they're building islands, man-made islands. There's one island that can currently fit the park of Westworld on it, which is about the size of Houston, which is pretty large. So I do believe that it is a Chinese-owned island. I just don't believe that it's in the South China Sea. I think it's another island that's for a different video that shares a lot of dualities. With we talked about this before, but I think that the city we saw, did that look? I'm not really that informed about architecture, but to me that does look like a Eastern city, an Asian city.
Yeah, so they kept showing the same angle in which it was the city around them, and then a body of water, and then another city on the edge, some kind of peninsula, for instance. I don't know what's important about that yet. I think to understand that, you really need to look at the architecture. You need to look at some of the stuff that was written on the buildings. There was names on the buildings that were either Chinese or Japanese. Forgive me either way. I'm not sure. But the part of terraforming, right, and kind of a transition to this, the biggest thing for me about this is the unknown thing at the very end, in which William says, in answer to a question no one has ever dreamed of asking, do you want to see? And then they take Dolores to the part of the park that is being terraformed. And it's being terraformed by those gigantic machines, right? And there was multiple. I believe that there was 4 of them, right, in frame.
Yeah,
and the way that it's portrayed. Yeah, the way that it's portrayed, maybe more in the background as well. But the part that is important is that when Ford was using a single one, it was this massive thing. So just try to understand the scale of what that could be. And it may very well be the Mesa, but I just don't see that.
Yeah, I mean that's the big thing is that's what made this, because like everything was tied up nice for last episode, and everything's tied up really nice with this. I really loved seeing the host within the real world, because that was always the question: have they seen it before? And that's playing a that is why, you know, Dolores is maybe more suited to be the Spartacus, since she's, you know, she actually has been in the real world before. I really enjoyed seeing the host. I really enjoyed seeing the host game played to a point, on a fun level. And it's definitely, let's see, I got one more question about China here. The weapon though is it's just unknown. I mean, gathering intel is one thing, but are they built? It's not the Mesa hub because of the location, like we were talking about before. We were pretty sure that's not where it's at, because they're west, aren't they? Right now.
Yeah. So Pariah is right next
ahead.
to, geographically looking at this map, Pariah, and you can even see it in the show. The mesa in which Delos works out of is right next to Pariah. So for them to be going west, it theoretically could be the mesa, but it makes it sound like more something past that, probably towards where the ocean is that we see in the very end when all the hosts are died.
Yeah, I mean, it's either some sort of like, because we're still not sure about how Hax has a good theory about how they get into the park and how that all works. It might be something like that, but that's going to be a big mystery. It's almost like the steeple that we see at it might even be the same. I think it's episode 3 of season 1. Okay, we've got Tony, sorry. Tony Jean, who actually should remember me, I've known you for a long time. So great of me to mispronounce your name. Could it maybe not be a Chinese island, but rather a lot of Chinese tech purchased by Delos, thus some contracted Chinese soldiers protecting it? Weird question, I know. No, not weird question. I know you pretty well, Tony, so I'm going to be kind of a jerk to you. It's just no. I mean, if you buy tech from somebody, they don't get to send the military. I know Tony quite well, so she'll take this well. But I mean, again, I'm not an expert, but no, it's, you know, they were able to kick them off because most likely they're leasing this land. And my theory is that the reason again that Walt Disney was able to exert so much, you know, power and just unprecedented to this day. No regulations, deals. Deborah, who I'm going to talk to after this, worked for them, and she said she's got some information, which is usually, when you're talking about the Mouse House, is usually some pretty bad dirt. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, no, it's, it looked like a situation where, since they technically own the land, that they showed up because, there's a shitstorm on their hands, on an island they own. But he says you signed over the rights to the island, meaning, not you gave us all your iPads or something like that. It just wouldn't, intellectual property wouldn't constitute an army's presence. And that was kind of just like a posturing, in my opinion. Again, I'm not a military expert, but they were able to boot them off of there fairly. I mean, tell them get the fuck off the island. It's not like, no, we bought all your iPads, so now we can tell you to fuck off.
Yeah.
It's definitely...
real quick. So Tony's question was actually about Logan.
How is it about Logan?
No, so the Chinese tech question was by Amberlyn. Tony asked, can we discuss Logan?
Oh, well, good thing I know Amber too, and I didn't offend anybody too bad. Amber, I love you. Amber is one of she's my biggest Patreon supporters. Not anymore. But no, yeah, I mean, but it is interesting to look at it in a different manner. Like, there are always those options, but I don't see how buying tech would constitute army presence, unless it was military, like drones, maybe. But then, I mean,
the biggest thing I can think of is, like, if you buy a Rolex that's actually delivered to you by people of Rolex with bodyguards. But as for Logan, I don't know. I mean, the thing with Logan is, and we talked about this briefly with Phil as well. It's really important that we're seeing this character development. We see he's abusing drugs, and we see him come face to face with the person who essentially put his life into decline, with that being Dolores. And I think it's really important. I think that we're probably going to see him decline further. And my personal theory is that he is dead in what we think is the present. So yeah.
I think that he's going nowhere but up. He's doing all the big savvy businessman moves of an 80s businessman. He's just switching out cocaine for nuclear heroin, and he's just gonna run the world now. I there could be I mean, yeah, as of right now, narratively, he doesn't serve a purpose. It just shows another reason why the man in black is looking for redemption is because of maybe the what he's caused his friend to do, because it's kind of like a duality with Ford and Arnold as well, don't you think? That Ford, like, Ford mentioned something along those lines, maybe I should have let him do it more his way or something, and I'd still have my partner, yeah, but Logan, again, is a little bit of different. He was like, hey, why do I let you have that position when you came in with your shitty suits? Because you're a bitch. So it's like, I don't know. I'm not shedding many tears at that. I would go and I would give out high fives at his funeral. I'd be like, oh, this line's for high fives. That's for the coffin.
I don't know. I mean, this character is spoiled brat. His father has obviously been wealthy forever, and in extension, has himself been wealthy. So, I mean, I can't pretend to understand his persona outside of that, but I think it's justified. I mean, I think they develop him as that character that you're kind of not supposed to like, but as he digresses and as he abuses more drugs, abuses sex and alcohol, and we as the audience will sympathize with him 100%. We're going to see some heart-wrenching scene where he addresses William, he addresses the issues that caused all of this, and I think that before he dies, if he does, that we will at some point sympathize with Logan.
Well, yeah, I mean, any good television series will make you feel for the worst of characters, and I brought this up. I wrote this blog when I first started running the Amino community for my channel, talking about how I found it and this is during the first episode where we see them in the first season. And I write about how I was suspicious of, William immediately, because I found it far more normal. If I'm with a group of friends, I've talked about this before, and we're going to that park, and I would pick the black hat because I'm like, hey, I'm here to have fun. The crazies are always the people that are trying to think, what do regular people do?
Yeah, I mean, I understand where you're coming from. I don't see that, though. I think taking on a black hat role, I mean, it can be whatever you want. You can physically grab any hat you want, but as to playing that game, to be able to rape and murder what is designed to be the most human-like thing achievable, I don't know, man. In theory, it's like, okay, you're going to the park for stimulation like that because you can't do that in the real world, but I think that you choosing a white hat doesn't mean that it's an unrelatable thing. I really do think that it's much, much harder than just being able to say from a third party, I would do a black hat and I would run the world. I think it's a whole different mindset of when you're actually pulling the trigger, murdering what is designed to beg for their life and plead and bleed and say, God, please, I love you. Please don't kill me. And then,
Guys, just a little side note. I don't know if Hax can hear me, but I'm pretty sure that he's the guy that picked the white hat. I think I think he's fine.
I definitely would. I mean, William's first time at the park, he's trying to understand what the park is. I think that most people first time around will pick that white hat because it's essentially going easy mode at first. Whereas Logan has been there before and then takes the black hat.
Yeah, I mean, and it comes down. Well, what it comes down to for me is it was way odder for me it's like when you're playing a video game, which I don't have time to play much anymore, but like I used to play Skyrim a lot. Now, there's one thing, if anybody's familiar to game, to get like familiar with all like the NPCs and non-playable characters, and I think it's Whiterun, and play for like maybe 100 game hours and not hurt anybody, do everything legit, and then one day you ride in on a horse and you stab them all to death. You know what I mean? Like something about that is more sinister to me than the guy that comes in the game and just starts killing people right away. The person that needs to feel like, because you did bring this up, you're like, well, they're begging for their life, they're programmed, this isn't just like killing like this, like even if it's simulated, you know, consciousness. It's still the effect. Now, Dan Carlin, Hardcore History, does an excellent series on this where they talk about, you know, this goes back to the gladiatorial days. There's always been this yearning for us to embrace carnage. You know, they didn't have television sets back then, so they went to the arena. And yes, gladiators didn't always kill each other because they cost money, but there were always executions, and they killed like half of the animals in the world as well. So there's always been this need for bloodshed, and then we moved it to television, plays, television, so on. And so the next logical step is this. So what does this say about human nature that we want to see this simulated death? I mean, because that was the closest thing they could get. I mean, it's pretty dark thought. It's a really intriguing series, and I don't know. I don't believe humans are inherently evil. Lord of the Flies is a very bad commentary.
I don't know.
No, these, first off, they go crazy within a day for no reason, and it just shows like, okay,
but wait, with that single thought, right? You go to this park. What do you do in the first 24 hours of you spending $40,000 there?
I go to the brothel. I take a break, and then I go back to the brothel. I go on an adventure. And then I probably get a drink at the brothel.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, but I mean, the idea of them going mad in a brief period of time, I think is more on my argument than yours. But yeah.
Tony Jean, who, you know, who I love, I've made that obvious. She goes, what point in time do you think the scene with William and, James coming in at the helicopter took place? I think that's okay. So we got to figure the events were 35 years ago, around 30 years ago, I think, for what we saw last season. So I think that was probably about like 29, 28 years ago. This is 2052, even though they erased that from the like current day. Westworld was cited as taking place in 2052, which is a popular television trope where everything like advanced. I don't think that we're going to have like all the things they have by that point. But anyways, you know, we're looking at probably about 25 to 30 years at this point. I guess I would say in the future from now, or maybe even 10 to, I guess 10. These timelines always fuck me up. I would say it's anywhere from 15 to 25 years. I know that's vague, but I'm going to protect myself here from 2018.
Yeah, so I mean, they say that the park can physically exist for 2 to 3 years after that point. So for them to decide to invest, I think we're still looking around that 30 year range. A lot can happen in a single year.
Yeah, we got another question about how do we see the future for Maeve and Dolores. I think Hax kind of hit this, you know, perfectly with, you know, once she comes to, with the help of my perfect, you know, narrative prediction of her, because I predicted there will be conflict in a story after Maeve faces her conflict, which we are predicting will be, you know, she finds her daughter, and then the daughter takes her away from the scary lady because she's got a new mom by this point, and Maeve is faced with a little bit of an issue. You know, how does she take this? If she wants to embrace this as reality, then how can she discount her ex daughter's, you know, reality that she's living now? And we think that will combine these methods of Dolores and Maeve, and hopefully Leaky the Leaky, I'll tell you what, if it wasn't for Bernard being all leaky, I could probably predict a lot of this, you know, the full narrative for this season a lot better. He is, I mean, and that's the point. They're like, well, this is going to be pretty simple to have these guys figure out. They're like, well, what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? They're like, Bernard's brain starts leaking. They're perfect. So okay, yeah, I had to choose. Now this is how you know, transparent we are here in the Justin Thomas show, and with HaxDogma, I will approve this comment. I'd kill a fuck ton of people in a poetic ways, then I'd go get my game on with the ladies, my Westworld game plan. Michael Palmer, I applaud your transparency, and I'd like to say I find that way more normal than the person that would be in the chat that would be like, I'd go and visit the church And then I'd probably go on maybe one of the more family friendly quests, because that's the person that's burning that church down later that night.
But you can't. But even so, but you can't pretend to put yourself in those shoes to go, I could realistically understand that these creatures aren't human, and in killing them, very little consequence comes through, when their entire directive is to make you believe otherwise. Like, to witness someone pleading for their life as if they are a real creature. We see the effect of this exact thing when it comes to looking at Williams for season 1. He felt something as a novice to the park. He understood that they were feeling, even if they weren't. But in him doing things to kill or hurt them, they were witnessing that. So you're making a conscious effort, even if it has no stakes, you're making a conscious effort to hurt anything in the universe. And even if it doesn't have bearing and does nothing, you're still doing that. And I think that's maybe more psychotic. But again, it's all hearsay. And that is the point of the park, is to do those things that you can't otherwise do.
What do you think about the idea of, and this is why this can get real tinfoily, that, like they say they wanted to create a place that they weren't judged by God. This is God. Now that I'm going to say it anyways. It sounds so stupid, but they claim they're the only people keeping tally. So regardless of, maybe it's just a very firm atheist that runs this park, have they found some way to like put it in some other dimension, like to imply that they know, like that they have a complete immunity from any judgment from God, anything like that? Because it's odd how he says that, we wanted to create the place, where God doesn't judge, and but what we got was the opposite, because we were keeping tally. So it's like, is he implying that like he found a way to hide themselves from God? Because if so, I'm not really that religious, but I don't want to roll the dice. So if I could kind of put a little bit of a, blurry little line over here so they can't tell what I'm doing.
I mean, the way that you hide from God is that you don't believe in God.
I get that. But then there's always that freaking chance that it's true, and then you're screwed. It's like, shit.
Yeah. So real quick, so Johnny B about video games. But if you think about and my whole theory is that everything becomes normality at some point. If all around you everyone's killing people and it doesn't matter, killing hosts and it doesn't matter, there's no effect, then you become numb to that, right? I play video games all day long, but in my youth, when I was first being introduced to video games, blood and gore was like, oh my gosh, wow, that's something that I need to look away from or not agree with. So my whole theory is that at some point, it becomes normal, and at some point you can become Black Hat. But saying that you would just go to the park and immediately choose Black Hat, have no sympathy to the hosts, be able to look at children or mothers and children crying as you shoot them, I just don't see it possible. And if it was possible, that would scream more psychotic than the person who practiced a little bit of a motor before you get to that point.
I guess, we could play the crazy game all day long. There's always levels. There's the people that go on the banding quest and maybe they kill the hosts that aren't the ones that are, they're portrayed as the bad guys, but then they want to make their skin into some type of lamp or something. There's always exceptions.
Yeah.
These are bad jokes, but we could play this all day and make up scenarios and argue which one's worse. Let's just say that you can always become desensitized, just like we become desensitized with video games. But I also am with Hax on this. And there's been actually a lot of philosophers and tech guys that have talked about this. Jordan Peterson had somebody on that was really good that was talking about this, how it's not, there's too much of a divide with this in a video game. There's far too much of a divide, in my opinion. I don't care how good the graphics are. You're not there. You know what I mean? You can't compare this to a video game completely. You can compare the tactics to a video game, but the experience is so much more immersive. But anybody that's, I've not been in war, but I'm assuming, even though it's emotionally obviously very harmful to the soldiers, but they do. It's amazing what a human can get used to.
Everything at some point becomes normality, no matter what. It's like to understand that you can cope with anything no matter what is to better understand your existence. At some point, if humans lived forever to an infinite age, even the worst thing you could possibly imagine would no longer faze you.
Yeah, there's a great quote by he wrote that book, Helmet for My Pillow, and he's portrayed in the HBO series The Pacific. I'm blanking on his name right now, but he's based off a real person. It's a great book. It's kind of like a modern day Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. And there's a quote in there when he says, it's one thing to reckon what you've done, or reconcile what you've done with God. But it's a whole nother thing to reconcile it within yourself, that maybe you can convince yourself that if you believe in a higher power, they can forgive you. But, you never truly lose that grief and stuff like that. I mean, it's kind of sad, but it's kind of, I really enjoy that quote because it embraces just the utter fucking mess that you would be after going through something like it. He went through, this soldier was at Guadalcanal. This guy mowed down 2,000 Japanese soldiers. You know what I mean? Yeah. So but he was told that that's what he was supposed to do, and he was given medals for it. So I always, well, first off, you got to have just nothing but respect for those guys. But it's just, when he was there, he was desensitized. When he got home, it was a whole different thing. So maybe do you think that William has any PTSD? Obviously not. I mean, do you think William embraces killing?
I think that the park makes it a really good point to only give you what you can handle, as they've stated, quote per quote. But yeah, I mean, the idea of PTSD coming out of the park after you commit such atrocities definitely has to be something that they go over in their decompression or the leaving of the park. How do you go through the process of getting someone out of the park back in the same mental state of everything's not a host. You cannot kill everybody. You cannot steal and rape and murder and pillage.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point too about bringing us to the decompression. That I don't believe that that's like literally like what you need to, like, it doesn't decompress you. I believe that is just like a holding period that they hold them once they're like finishing up. Maybe they're collecting more DNA. Maybe they're selling. Maybe they're holding them to sell what they've gathered to the highest bidder. They're also entitled to anything that is disclosed at Mesa Hub. There's no technology or no information, at least, about how that is at all. Like, I don't know the science behind a decompression chamber, but it doesn't fucking look like one to me. It looks like a tiki bar. Granted, it's Westworld, but yeah.
I mean, just the decompression of it, yeah.
I just think it's like to get them back, like accumulate, like back to feel normal within the real world where they haven't, to avoid PTSD to a point. That decompression is just kind of like a phrase they use for it. We have now I want to talk really quickly. They say that there's 800 soldiers going to a certain point. I freeze framed my TV and I took a picture with my iPad. Let me tell you how that worked out. Not well. But I do believe that they're pointing to an area that is it's where Ford's new narrative was taking place. Let me go off the chat really quick and look at where I think it is, because I was.
Hey, Justin, you there? Oh, looks like we lost Justin here. Let me see if I can get him back in here. As we wait for this, I do want to move more specifically toward the issues around this specific episode.
Oh, did you hear me? When did I cut out?
Oh, you cut out maybe 30 seconds ago.
Okay, so when I'm looking up this map really quick, there's a lot of comments, and this was also mentioned in the show, that the valley might not be a valley, even though we will be exploring that, but it could be simply a weapon. I think Dolores actually says it in a lot of our very intelligent people in the chat are saying it as well. And there actually are. I'm actually really liking these questions that are in the chat. And you know me, I'm kind of a prick. So no, I'm really loving these. These are some good questions. What do you think about that?
Yeah. As to the Valley.
Yeah, being a weapon, not this metaphor.
I mean, so if the Valley is a weapon, then it means that Dolores working with the assumption that she does know what she's doing, and we've been given no reason not to believe that what she is going toward is what's going to get them out of the park, is that DNA, right? What they're collecting. But I don't believe it's that. I don't think that that's a weapon by any means, let alone one that can take over the world. Actually, I'm sorry, I take that back entirely. If that is the case, and they come out and expose Delos for doing this, then Delos goes down, but then they still release all this information. Then the world goes to chaos because of, well, every atrocity you've ever done in this park now being published. Yeah, that actually aligns pretty well as a weapon. I don't know if we've been given enough evidence to support that is the goal. And I feel like I'm even stretching to get to that point. So I don't know if it's that, or I don't know, a device that causes floods, or maybe a virus like I mentioned, but for humans. And that would kind of align to the issue, or the main point of the movies, is this reoccurring theme of viruses and but as for a weapon being the Valley Beyond, I don't know. Really, all we have to go on before we do like a deep dive of this is that, and the biggest thing that's stuck in my mind is William references that he's taking them to where, to something that he created, and then we see William creating something, but then he also references an old friend is what introduced him to that. So before we get confirmation, it's going to be some kind of mental jumping jack, but my best guess is maybe it is that DNA collection, or maybe it is a legitimate weapon that we haven't been introduced to yet.
Yeah, and we get a few good. I think well said. We can't really go too much further into that without more information. The only thing I'll add to that is that if the Valley allows them to ascend to full freedom and allows them out of the constraints of the park, that could be a weapon in itself. But we have, how big is this fucking island? We haven't seen the other parks yet. Good point. I have a geophysicist, Milt, who we get along really well, except for our many disagreements about Westworld. He's working with me on the China Sea thing. He is willing to accept the bullets, the physics of the bullets. And this guy, legit geophysicist. And he will not side with me on this island I'm proposing I'm bitter. Let's just put it like that. But he has done the calculations for me. So I thank you, Milt. Even though the bullets ricocheting is definitely something they cannot explain. But it's about the size of Houston, and that's bigger than LA. For example, Disney World, which we were talking about earlier, is about the size of San Francisco, which is double the size of Manhattan. I believe it's almost half the size. It's fairly big. Houston is, wait, you're from Texas. Oh shit, I just kind of,
oh no, that's okay. That's
outed you. Here's his address. So yeah, can you, that's a huge ass city, right?
Yes, it is. It is very big. You can drive around that and easily be lost.
Yeah. So let's see. We got. Okay. Now I like this too, because at first when I froze my TV, I gave it the voice command and it froze. No, I hit the clicker and I looked at what he was showing as a weapon. At first glance, until I put my glasses on and I was like, damn, it's a boat. I'm like, the flood. It's a boat. It's Noah's Ark.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And I was like, oh, okay, I'm getting it. It's not great, but I'm getting it. And then I'm like, oh no. I'm like, it just looks like, basic fucking things to, terraform or whatever you call it, the land. It looks like that was like taking out the rocks and pouring in sand, but it does look like they're digging a hole. Like that's why I asked you, Hax. I was like, I think this might be because I don't know, they're in a weird building before that, which I'm not sure is a Mesa Hub or not.
Actually, so that is the Mesa Hub. I'm actually looking at the screen now. You can, if you recall where they go into cold storage, they go down in episode 1, and it's there's water, decrepit part of the of the facility, you see a broken globe that shows Delos. It actually, it's that same scene in the background, but from the perspective of this observation room, and that globe is actually lit up. So I'm pretty sure at that point they are in the mesa.
So, and then he takes her out to show her the weapon.
I believe so. Yeah.
So, do you think they could be drudging out where that water is?
I really have no idea. I like the water in itself is hard to explain looking at one timeline, but then trying to justify the water being involved with something that William knew about for 30 years, and then they're just wrapping around. They're like, oh yeah, the super weapon exists, but our main concern is this data. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like, why build the dam? I mean, they have an army of like, I mean, up until recently, of like killer fucking like badass hosts that if they want to kill people, they'll do it, fairly soon. They'll just deactivate them. As far as the South Island or the South Chinese Sea goes and all that, and all these theories about, like why it's there. We do see the helicopter once, which I was hoping. Now, it reminded me a little bit of The Walking Dead, so I threw up in my mouth, and then I got over it. But I was, when I saw that in the trailer, I was like, oh shit, they've lost air, like the control of their airspace. But obviously, it's Delos that's coming in. But another reason why it's likely to be one of these, man-made islands is because they control the airspace. That's why it's so perfect. But again, I am going to propose that it is not in there. It's in the Pacific, and it has an island called Ford Island off of it, and it has a Buddhist shrine that has a deity or what. I'm not familiar with that belief system whatsoever. I'm sure it's great, but I do know there's a heavy, influence, Buddhist influence on Westworld, from what I've heard, but there's a Valley of the Temple on this island. And the shrine in which they worship all has to do with cognition and, self-awareness, sentience. It's like all this, it works perfectly on so many levels, except for the weather. Geophysicist Milt that won't agree with me. I'm going to have to put an asterisk on it. But yeah, but you'd have to believe that, I mean, come on, what do we have right now that controls the weather? That all those crazy conspiracy people, if you're a conspiracy theorist and you're not crazy, I love you and I think you're smart, but are always saying it's changing our weather. What is that, HARP?
I'm really not sure.
But I mean, we're already messing with weather. What's to stop them from stopping it raining? Because obviously, I mean, it doesn't seem like it ever rains in Westeros. It's always sunny in Westeros, or Westworld. Sorry.
Okay.
So, I mean, like, controlling the weather wouldn't be that big of a deal. Okay, exactly. No air support to take out the boats. Daisy Cutter.
So real quick, specifically about the weapon, right? Johnny B, you actually bring up something that's really, really messing with my head right now. So he states that the weapon is that red ball that we see in the previews, that will give them the ability to procreate, and the new opening scene shows the baby. I think that if that is the weapon that they choose, or that they believe is so influential to getting them to freedom, maybe.
I like that.
Yeah, Johnny, I mean, I really do like that. But I feel like it's just something that is just this grand thing we haven't been introduced to yet. I really feel like the connotation around everything, and I think in our deep dives we'll be able to put together a compilation of every time they reference it and have a better understanding. But it is something definitely conceptual like that. And the idea of that red orb being for the host ability to procreate, I don't see why not.
Yeah, because that would be, man, Johnny. I'm loving this Johnny. I believe he came from Costume Co's. That's where we met. Johnny be crazy. Johnny be also funny, and Johnny be also smart. I'm loving him in the chat. Because I mean, look, again, I believe that the symbolism in that trailer, which I did do a video on, it works either way, but it works even better if that's the case, because they're just showing the progression of the series about, like the lines are going to become so blurred that there is no more line, because it's all about opinion. But hold on one second. I'm trying to finish a thought here, and then I won't be able to finish it. I really like that, because what Ford says we're done. Do you think that we would have the extinction of the human race if they're able to actually organically? Because right now they still depend on, the humans to, do certain tasks for them. Now, granted, they have hosts working within, but who's to say that they haven't? Do you think they've safeguarded themselves by, like, leaving certain positions not filled by hosts, which would be like an kind of, is that racist? I think, yeah, Delos is racist for sure, against hosts.
So something about the baby talk, right? So Joanne actually brings up, quoting, baby probably just means rebirth, and that could. But here's something even crazier about that: is there a point to children? Like, is there a point in which a child is required? If you're creating people and then their stories, their minds, why would you choose to have another member of your team come in as a baby with low mobility and a very ineffective way to exist or fight back in a world being run by humans? Or would it just be the creation of another host, as in bringing another one onto your team? I don't know. Maybe the baby is there for the first of them to be entirely free will driven, that they don't program a storyline for, that they don't influence it all on the program side, that they just let a host go from birth to adolescence and being an adult with no programming and see what happens.
Well, I think it has more to do. I get what you're saying, but I mean, like, it's about be able to self-sustain. They don't need anything else other than themselves. And because what would be the difference other than you get what some people would consider to be babies cute? I don't. You get the baby out of it, but I mean, if you build a new host, it doesn't matter, like, if it's in the shape of a baby or not. I mean,
yeah, it's still just a host mind.
Yeah, you could go through the same progress. You could make it like a 98-year-old guy. You make old Bill and have him go through the trials of adolescence and all that. I think that I don't know. I really, because the series obviously is all about, showing how we put ourselves above everything else, and we like to make these lines, and we like to always put ourselves on the right side of it. So what happens when there's something that's superior to us on every single level? And the only, argument right now for them is, well, we made you. What happens when we stop making them? We already don't have control of them. Then they start making, I mean, shit. I mean, they're going to have Justin YouTube world. It's going to suck. But you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to have the Dolores, storyline. I'm like, Daddy, what's going on? They shouldn't be this far away at dark. And I don't know. Maybe hopefully you won't be my Teddy. But I think go ahead.
I think the inclusion of the baby in that trailer, I'm sorry, not the trailer, but in the opening credit, is very, very peculiar now. At first I thought, okay, just the evolution of a being, or the birth of a being, a new family, affection, love, in which we see in Maeve. But more importantly, is there any purpose of children or babies in the host world?
I'll argue there's no purpose of them in our world other than empty your bank accounts and dirty diapers. But no, I other than to give them a sense of their own community. And who's to say that they don't? I mean, let's just get real tinfoily here. Maybe they've cured all diseases or something, but maybe something that we don't know about's going on. Because Man in Black implies that, like, they're all going to die. Like, I don't know what that's all about. If they cured, like, I know you'll eventually just die, your cells turn cancerous and all that. I'm sorry, dropping some hard facts. I mean, not me, I won't die. You'll see it tomorrow. But you know what I mean? Like, but he's very, like, specific. That was what's weird about that. And yeah, I don't believe they made a magical dome that stops the magical god in the sky from seeing him. But I mean, that's, like, the metaphor he was using. But it's like he implies that they're all done for. You know what I mean? Like, for sure. Like, what is this event that he knows about?
Yeah, I think they bring up points in the chat about the personality, or development of empathy, and I agree. The babies, or maybe a baby, could be used to really showcase that hosts can exist without wanting to kill other humans, such as we see Maeve. Her purpose in life is essentially just finding her kid that she loves, even if that kid doesn't really know who she is yet. So yeah, I could see it on that kind of scale. But as we wrap up here, is there any more questions, and just throw them in chat, that you want to have us tackle revolving around this episode specifically? I know that we've kind of gotten on the tangent about pretty much everything under the sun, but specifically Reunion Season 2, Episode 2. What are the last thoughts you have, Justin?
Yeah, I'll give a few here after I do read Deborah's brilliant quote from a brilliant man, Walt Disney. Our greatest natural resource is the minds of our children. Now, granted, I'm sure he was not including all children in that. I'm just saying a lot of Walt Disney's friends died at the Nuremberg trials. Let's see. But that's very funny. And Deborah, I want to talk to you about your experience at Disney. First off, I'd like both of us to rate it compared to Chestnut, because obviously, it's different, but it's also got a lot of similarities. I mean, they're following the same kind of they're following the same type of sequence as far as the episodes go so far. With the way they're handling it. So I don't know if they're going to continue to do that. That'll be very interesting if they do. And also, I want to know what you think about the Man in Black's game. What is the point of it? What is the end game of it? I mean, I don't think there's any way that this is just for shits and giggles, unless Ford just has the sense of humor that I have, because I'd put him through hell. I'd be just fucking around, dude. You're meaningless. Yeah, I mean, like, what do you think the end game is of this episode? Because you're right. Let's focus back in. We've talked about Buddhism. We've talked about the Third Reich. We've talked about communism. But that's part of the live stream. I'm loving it. We talked about haggis, which sounds awesome. And I want to thank everybody for coming. So, and you guys in the chat too. Do you think this was a superior Chestnut, or do you think this was just on par with it?
I mean, I'm super terrible at rating episodes in comparison of any kind of system, whether it be compared to another episode or just a 5-star rating. I think it was a good episode. I think it was a filler episode that they managed not to make just a boring, methodical thing of here's what is happening, here's what needs to happen. So all in all, it was a great episode. In comparison to Chestnut or anything like that, I couldn't tell you. But as for Man in Black's Endgame, I truly think that for everything that they've said about this game, about the Valley Beyond, I really think William is going to be instrumental in getting the conscious hosts out of the park, defined their conscious as what they define being self-aware as. So I think that's truthfully it. And I don't think Man in Black knows that yet, or he may, some of the stuff that he talked about in season 1 was like when he talks to Lawrence or other hosts about setting them free. It doesn't mean simply setting them free in the sense that he can now shoot them and they real die, or he can get shot and they real die. Or does he mean he's going to set them free as in the sense that he truly believes that, like he saw all those years ago, Dolores was alive and can be alive if they are, quote unquote, set free. So I think that's ultimately it.
Yeah, I think there's no way. Now, see, I disagree with the filler. I think that they gave a lot of exposition in a very clever way. This episode this episode gave us so much more than the first episode. First episode definitely wasn't filler either. But I mean, we learned.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yes, granted, there's filler in every episode, but I would not consider this a filler episode. It's just my opinion. And I agree with you on rating things. I think we should maybe start rating things because, it eventually will give people a kind of gauge, to know where we fall. Like, well, they gave this episode this and this episode this, so they can see at least, it doesn't make it so it's a good episode or bad episode, but they can better gauge how much we enjoyed it better than it was awesome or it effing sucked.
So I fall to the symptom of the first time I see everything, I'm in love with it. Right? If it has a positive response in my brain, I'm just obsessed with it. I think it's an amazing show.
So, well, thank you.
Yeah, I will say that it was an amazing episode. But then when you get down to the criticisms of it, or look more in depth, then maybe you could put a value to its what it was, a 5-star rating. But I think specifically giving a rating is hard.
Oh, it's hard, but doing this live stream's hard. Give me that 1 to 5.
Yeah, a 5 out of 5.
Nice. Nice.
I mean, it was an episode. It was exactly what it needed to be. I couldn't improve it any other way. But
Yeah.
But again, I think my biggest fear is that you're going to ask me this every week, and I'm going to say they're all 5 out of 5 because I couldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree, and I'm going to ask you every week.
Okay.
I won't do it myself though because I'm just very unfair. Just to let you guys know, this is on my channel. But since Hax is, and especially next week, we're going to be running OBS. The reason we weren't able to do it is because we wanted to have Phil be able to come on. Just to show, that we're both talking we're all talking Westworld, and it's not a fight. It's a conversation. Unfortunately, YouTube doesn't offer too many opportunities to do what we did. So you have to do it in the most simplistic way. So it was just such a treat to even have him on for a few moments. He's so enjoyable to watch. So thank you to him, even though he's not here right now. But I think that, it's important for people to know that this is on my channel, but any super chats that, you guys, of course, we're going to answer all the questions. We don't have thousands of people in here, so you don't need to give money to get a, question answered. But if you do donate super chats, they are split between me and Hax. So if you're a Hax supporter, think about Hax. If you're a Justin supporter, think about me. You know what I mean? If you like us both, just roll with it. But no, I'm really enjoying this, and we will find our footing. This episode, I was so happy. I'm like, all right, I'm loving this. We got so much to talk about, and then that weapon thing. That's why I was like 2 minutes. I joined this 2 minutes before we had to start, and I was like, what the hell, man?
Yeah.
What the fucking hell? I was like, they just I felt like we could have explained this so, perfect. We could have just rolled it up real nice and neat, and then they threw that curveball. But want to know what? That's that Westworld curveball, and that's what makes it so good. I mean, if we can answer every question like we could last time, it wouldn't be as good of a show. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it. Anything that we should be looking forward to from you, Hax? If you guys have not seen Hax's Westworld virus video, I can't. I'm still gushing about it, brother. I'm loving it.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I think so. My plan is to have a explained video out on Tuesday or Wednesday, and then hopefully a theory about tying in Bernard and maybe multiple storylines that are evading what the show creators are trying to point us at on Friday or maybe Thursday.
Yeah, absolutely. And I run the Amino. You can always find it wow, that's the worst grammar in the world. You can always find myself's videos. You can always find my videos, Hax's videos, Robert's videos on that Amino. Of course, the best way to get it is to subscribe to our channels. And we hope to have special guests on in the future as well. And we're always looking for people that are knowledgeable. Like this is what this live stream is about. We could have easily just did the podcast and edited out all the, what I would consider filler, and give it to you guys. But we want you guys to be a part of the conversation. If there's any show that deserves to have a live conversation about, it's Westworld. It's almost like, how can you not?
Yeah.
I don't even know if I could go to bed without, talking about it with somebody. So I'm happy that there's a group of people that are so passionate about it. I will be fair to Hax, and I will give my rating. I will give this a 4 out of 5. I think that the weapon thing could have been handled a little bit better. And I'm not just I'm probably being a little bit of a bitch about it. But it's not just that it seems like they were trying to throw us off like very aggressively. Like they could have achieved stumping me in a far smoother way, in my opinion. But it was great. You know what I mean? It's just weird. Like, ooh, the weapon. And I just saw some cranes. I'm like, oh shit, I don't know.
That's the weapon. It's just a bunch of cranes, man.
Yeah, they're like, it's the construction business.
The cranes are actually alive as well. They're hosts.
It's a metaphor for Trump. No, he doesn't actually build anything. He just slaps his name on it. But hey, great way to end the stream. But no, thank you guys so much. And make sure to check out our channels and make sure to be on the lookout for our videos that we will probably. I didn't rewatch last episode for real. I'm going to be rewatching this one before I go to bed. And if I still don't get it, I might give you a call, Hax, and then I'll do it one more time. And if not, I'm done.
Sounds good, man.
Yeah, we'll get it.
And you yourself or anyone in the chat, if you guys ever want to swing by the Discord and talk with me, like audio wise, I'm always there, and just ping me and we'll get in a chat and get in a call and talk.
Yeah, the Discord is linked, and we are going to be integrating that into the live stream next week.
Yes.
So you will be able to have the live chat plus the Discord. So Hax is the Discord guy, so we'll get it. So death by yeah, I'm loving it. I'm loving it. You guys are the best. Not only are you intelligent, you're funny, and not only do you get my sick and sometimes bad sense of humor, you support us, and you're the reason we do this. So thank you guys so much. We will see you next week, and looking forward to some Westworld videos during the week. And if you haven't seen the pre-show live stream where we were much more sure about what we were talking about, make sure to check that out, and we'll see you guys soon.
Much love, everyone.